Have you ever tried to be mindful? It can be hard. How many of us struggle to clear our minds without falling asleep or feeling a compulsive need to write a to do list? Angie Bailey knows this. And that's why she's so passionate about teaching her skill to others. Angie teaches you how, in just 10 minutes a day, you can get the relaxation and self care that you need with nothing more than calligraphy. So, if you need self care, relaxation, and creativity in your life, this is the greatest episode for you because Angie believes that art can heal. And through her calligraphy practice, you can spark creativity and meditate by doing calligraphy. I'm so excited to talk to her about this and also create beautiful art in the process. Everyone, please welcome my great and beautiful, spectacular friend, Angie Bailey. Angie.
Hi, Jennifer. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, it's all true. And I have been fascinated with you as a human being, first of all, but also with what you do since the day that we met. You have such a beautiful energy about you. And I don't know if that's as a result of what you do or if the art that you do is a result of the person you are, but there's something here. There's something just very natural about you that I would just, ooh, we've got to dig into that today.
Excellent. I love it.
So, okay, let's talk about calligraphy. Like, how did you get started? Why do you love it? Just tell me all the things about calligraphy.
Okay, so when I was a kid, I was like the overactive kid. I'll be 54 this year, but
No, you
back in the
won't.
day, sorry.
I was like, no, you won't.
Yeah,
No.
I know it's crazy. So back in my time, they didn't diagnose people when I was a kid as, ADHD, but I'm pretty sure I was because I was like always running around. I was super skinny too because spinning around all the time, very overactive. And then for one birthday, my sisters bought me this little calligraphy kit. It's one that they still sell, a very similar one at Michael's. So they bought me this kit. And, I open up the box. There's a little booklet teaching you how to do it. Like, I think I was 10 years old. I open up the little booklet. I start reading it. I put all the pens together and I just start at it, learn it through this booklet. And I'd be sitting there for hours at a time. So I was like a Tasmanian devil the rest of the time. And then when I sat down to do calligraphy, I would sit there for hours. And so I guess everybody else around me absolutely loved it because I wasn't, spinning, but I loved it. It really, I didn't realize till now that back then it was really calming. I'm a kid, so, I'm just doing it because it's fun. It's a neat thing to do. I make all these pretty words with it. But there was a time in my life that I stopped practicing like for a couple decades. And then life got really crazy. And I thought to myself, I need something to calm me back down. And I remembered, I thought, is it possible that if I start doing calligraphy again, that I will actually get this relaxation and focus that I obviously felt when I was a kid? And sure enough, I picked it up again and it brought me right back. You know, it's just amazing to me. And, I want to share it now with the world. I love doing it. And before you were saying, like, is it the art that brings out I'm not exactly sure how you said it, brings out this part of my personality. And I really think it is because I am happiest when I'm creating. And for that period of time when I was busy, when my kids were young and I was working and life was centered around family life and work, I put that aside and it was almost like my personality did change. Like I wanted to be the fun, nice person that everybody knew, but it was almost like I was acting because I wasn't really myself. And now I'm finding my way back to myself at 53. It's crazy, but I'm so happy that I am. I'm feeling better than I felt in such a long time.
That's That's amazing. And it's so interesting to hear you say this because I've only known the Angie who's finding herself again. I don't
Uh-huh.
know this other Angie. And I always find that really fascinating, the different facets of ourselves that different people know.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting to hear that about you because to me you seem like, oh, this like calm, cool chick, because I see the calligraphy, Angie.
Right. Oh, yes, I have many facets, many secrets that wow, if you only knew, Jennifer. But like you said, we're all so multifaceted, and it's just,
Yes.
that's what makes us human, right? And I just absolutely love that I'm back to this side of myself again.
Hmm. It's
Yeah,
like finding yourself in a way.
yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, what I love most about your mission and your message with calligraphy is that this isn't something that it's not like it has to take over your life. We don't all have to be Angie Baileys who are teaching mindfulness calligraphy. I don't even know if I said that right. Calming calligraphy, you call it, which I love. That's got such good alliteration to it. But, we don't all have to be dedicating as much time to it as you do. It's just a few minutes a day.
Exactly. So, I mean, when you first start out, you need to set yourself up with the proper practice. You need a little space, 2 foot by 2 foot space. And
That's
um,
not much.
no,
Two
it's
foot
not
by two
much at
foot.
all.
We can all
And
find that.
of course, there are different ways to practice calligraphy. So I'm talking about when you're doing it with a pointed pen, you need that space because you have the ink. So you don't want to be knocking it over. And interestingly enough, I knocked over my first thing of ink like in the summertime. First time ever that I knocked over a jar of ink on a horrible carpet that needs to be ripped out anyway. But
Somebody was telling you something.
yeah, but aside from that, there are other ways to practice calligraphy. You can do it with marker, of course. You can practice faux calligraphy, and I like to do them all. Now, no, it doesn't have to take up a lot of time. And once you set yourself up for the practice and learn the basic strokes, it's really a repetition of these strokes over and over and over. And then these strokes, when combined, make up most of the lowercase alphabet. And I know you're probably saying, oh, it's easy for you. You did this when you were a kid and everything. And you probably have beautiful handwriting. No, my handwriting is horrible. Maybe it was a little bit easier because it was like something that I did back in the day, but that's just like anything. Like when you were young, you practice all this art, and then somebody told you, oh, that's ugly, or grow up and stop doing that. And we put our creative selves on a shelf, but we all have that within us. And so getting back to the calligraphy being a mindfulness practice, it really is, because you need three things for mindfulness. You need intention, you need attention, and you need the proper attitude. So the intention of it is, okay, I'm going to set aside a little bit of time now and practice my calligraphy. So I'm going to sit down, I'm going to take a breath and say, close off the rest of the world and intentionally practice. Okay. Next, I need to focus my attention. So I mean, this is with any art, but especially with the pointed pen calligraphy, the attention part is for any mindfulness practice is that you are taking the time to hear what's going on, using your senses. So with the pointed pen calligraphy, I don't know, you've probably seen some of the videos on my Instagram that I say, turn up the sound. The pen nib makes this scratching sound across the paper that I just absolutely love. Okay. I know it sounds crazy, but it's such a sensory experience when I'm doing this, making these strokes, because I'm hearing the scratching, I'm seeing the ink as it's flowing, it's wet and then it's drying. I know this might sound crazy, but
You're
that's
probably feeling it too. You feel that scratch.
yeah.
There's a
And then
texture.
the breath kind of coincides with the strokes. The upstroke, you're inhaling, the downstroke, you're exhaling, and it all kind of connects. Now, the third thing about mindfulness is attitude. Like, you have to have the proper attitude. And a lot of people with calligraphy or any art have a hard time with this, because the attitude you need to take is a non-judgmental one to yourself, right? You don't want to judge yourself. You don't want to say, oh my gosh, my handwriting is so beautiful, yet look at how horrible this chicken scratch is or whatever with trying calligraphy for the first time. You have to realize that, you're going to build upon it. It's something that you can't be perfect at, and we don't want to even strive for perfection. It's always a progress over perfection thing with calligraphy. And all the goodness is in the process of doing it. Like, I practice it because of how it makes me feel. That's why I do it. I do it every day. So the days I go to work, I can't wait to come home to do it. And the days that I'm off, that's all I want to do. Of course, I try to stop to eat and then I go for a walk or whatever on my days off. I just love my days off. But the non-negotiable thing that I have to do is my calligraphy. That's what I want to do. Yes, the reason why I do it is because of how it makes me feel. Now, of course, am I improving at it? Absolutely. Every time I do it, because I'm repeating those same basic strokes every time, you're bound to get better at it, right? So yeah, my calligraphy is looking really good. And yours will too, if you decide to go this route and try calligraphy as a mindfulness practice. And so it's a benefit, like, to me, the pretty things that I create is the side benefit to the actual practice of doing the mindfulness, the mindful calligraphy.
I love that. And it's such a different way of looking at it because we so often look at, wow, I want to get better at this. I want to get better at this. I want to get better at this. But what you're saying is do it because it feels good. Do it
Yes.
because you enjoy it and better will come.
Yes, 100%.
I,
That's exactly how I feel about it. And yeah, I think that's the way for any beginner to look at it. Just like, when we're learning to crawl, learning to walk and everything, you have to start off crawling, right? And then pulling yourself up, little baby steps, eventually you run. So yeah, with the calligraphy, that's for me, that's the right mindset to begin a practice like this. Because if you're doing it just for what you're going to create with it, you're going to be so judgmental of yourself. So you really need to treat yourself, as they say, like, treat yourself as you would a best friend. And while you're practicing, that's what you're thinking about. Wow, look at these beautiful strokes I'm creating.
I hope that
Yeah.
everybody listens to what a beautiful and simple message this is because it doesn't just apply to calligraphy. What you're saying here about judgment is that's one of my I have my credos, like these are my life things. These are my guideposts, which are joy and silliness and light and learning. But
Love it.
one of my opposites is judgment. Another of my opposites is fear. Another is guilt. Another is worry. So I have like the things that I am all for and the things that are my oppositions. And judgment is one of them for a reason, because as creative human beings, as human beings in general, every human's creative, judgment of ourselves is like one of the biggest ones, man. It holds us back.
Yeah, it always comes up,
Yeah.
right? But if, as you said, if you're creating the art or the calligraphy or whatever, just for the joy of the actual practice, you're bound to improve at whatever it is. Creativity is everywhere. And we do have to stop judging ourselves. I mean, I still do it, don't get me wrong. But that's why I think that's another reason why I love the calligraphy, because I tell myself, don't judge yourself. And maybe that's like part of the time of the day where I'm actually not judging myself. Interesting, eh? Like, because I do judge myself way too much.
Which is what they say about that's unfortunate, but we all do it. We all do it,
Right?
but that's part of what they say about mindfulness is that it's a break for your brain from the self-talk, because
Yeah.
we're talking to ourselves all the time. And that does give us a little like pause where it stops and you start to notice things when they do come in. So do you have that with your calligraphy? Do you notice more, or is it more just like I'm tuned out?
Sometimes I'm tuned out, but then other times, actually, what's funny is I started this other practice where, people journal, right? And I've always wanted to do a daily journal. But for some reason, I couldn't bring myself to it. Like they say, you just, write mindlessly or whatever. I tried it, but I just couldn't get into it. I thought, what if I did calligraphy? So here I am doing it slowly with my calligraphy pen, but things, start coming up. Because usually when I do my calligraphy, I don't know, I'm focusing more on the breathing, but when I'm writing, journaling with my calligraphy pen, yes, like these narratives come up, all these things, these thoughts come up, and I say, wait, like why are you thinking that? And it's bizarre. But I
Yeah.
guess it's because I'm setting aside time for myself to actually, you know, hear my thoughts instead of them being so, subconscious or whatever. And yeah, I catch myself thinking things.
Mm-hmm. Well, and maybe there's something to, I'm totally just supposing at this point, but maybe there's something to in that space where you're doing something that is really enjoyable to you. Maybe your mindset is just different. And so you're receiving, noticing, paying attention in a different way.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, well, you and I, before we started talking about neuroplasticity, which was
Yes.
something that was on an episode a while back with Sean. And if you haven't listened to that episode, go listen to it because he's fascinating. His mindset stuff
Wow.
is all about like climbing mountains and doing all of these huge feats, which is very
Mhm.
different from calligraphy. But the mindset thing, it's still there no matter what you're
Yeah,
doing. These things are
it's
applicable.
true. I love that episode. Yeah. It made me really step back and think, although I've known about neuroplasticity for years and how I should be talking to myself, I have been catching myself talking to myself negatively. So for a while now, but that episode really helped me in, you know, there are things that he had said and that you had said that I've heard over and over, but I just heard it at the right time. And now I'm trying to put things into practice, saying things the way he said about how to say something positively and negatively. Like I've known this, but I haven't done it. And then just when I heard it that time, it was like, yeah, I'm ready to do this now. So I've been doing it. You know what? And I don't know if it's a combination of that or the fact that I started taking vitamin D again, or the fact that I've been exercising more regularly again, but I really am feeling great these days.
Okay, so I do have to talk about some of the quirkier sides of things that you've done because I've seen you do calligraphy with a fork before.
Yes,
Let's talk about that.
so much fun. I wish I had the fork right here. Oh my gosh. So, Pinterest is like a rabbit hole that you can go down into, and you
Yeah.
type in calligraphy, and lo and behold, when I did that, I had seen somebody do calligraphy with a fork, and I thought, oh, I want to try that. And it's so much fun. You just dip the fork into the ink, and you create the lettering that way. Like I love finding different ways of creating lettering, and I love to do lettering on every surface I can find. My family doesn't love it so much, but I've done it on an apple and like everywhere, everywhere.
I was going to say what's the oddest thing that you have done hand lettering on? That's what it's called, right? Sometimes people call calligraphy hand lettering. What's the difference actually?
So yeah, okay. So the difference between hand lettering and calligraphy is done with a writing implement that produces the thin lines and the thick lines
Hmm.
all kind of in one swoop. Now, lettering is you are drawing letters. Now, faux calligraphy is you're creating the look of calligraphy by drawing the letters. So, really, faux calligraphy is quote lettering. So, faux calligraphy is the thing that you can do on any surface. That's what you see on wedding signs, for example, on windows. It's all faux calligraphy. So, it's drawing the letters. So that is lettering, quote.
So like at Starbucks where they've got all the coffees written out or whatever the coffee of the month is, that would be faux calligraphy.
That would be faux calligraphy, unless
Okay.
they have some giant brush pen that I have not seen.
How amazing would that be? They're standing up there holding
Right?
this huge pen.
Oh my gosh,
It
that would be
probably
so cool.
exists.
It probably does exist. So I would say for the most part, it's faux calligraphy, but if there's somebody out there that knows of some, giant brush pen, then yeah, that could be how they've created it as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I do have to say they're not out yet. Maybe by the time this episode launches, depends what day we end up launching it. Angie has created some calligraphy. I don't know. You'll have to tell me if they're calligraphy or faux calligraphy things that are going to be on some creative commute stuff. And I'm so excited because she's so stinking talented. Y'all are going to love what she has created for us.
You're
I'm
so
so excited.
sweet. You're so sweet. Yeah, that I would call lettering. And that I actually created on my iPad with on the Procreate app with my Apple Pencil. And yeah, the one quote is lettering. And the other one actually, the one that's more the script, was actually created with a calligraphy brush pen in the Procreate app. So like, oh, Procreate is amazing. So yeah, I
It's
love
totally backwards, I think, but it's
Procreate.
awesome. It's so awesome. She made me
Procreate
these
is amazing.
stickers.
So it was actually a brush pen that I used, that I created that brush pen. So you can buy brush pens. So this pen, um, it's a pressure sensitive one. So it works like a regular brush pen. So light on the upstrokes, you get fine lines, and you press heavy and you get a fatter line. So that was actually, digital calligraphy, if you want to call it, for that one.
Okay. Okay.
I
Fascinating.
I absolutely loved creating those things, because back in the day, Jen, I wanted to be a graphic designer. That's what I wanted to do. But, okay, I'm going to just tell you a little bit of a sob story. But when it was time for me to decide what I wanted to do post high school, I said, you know what? I want to go to art school. I want to be a graphic designer. And my mom said, do you really think you're good enough? I mean, this is a story you hear all the time. And my dad said, oh, you want to be a starving artist? Now, I love my parents and they were so supportive in so many ways, but they just got me at a time where maybe I just wasn't my strongest self. And I thought, oh, maybe they're right. And my mom's like, why don't you go to nursing school? Your sister applied and didn't get in. So I don't know if you've heard me say this story. So I thought, okay, I'll apply. Chemistry was a prerequisite. I didn't have chemistry. But guess what? I got in. By some fluke, I got in. And it was like, oh, okay, right? And so I actually really did not like nursing school. And my dad was like, you know what, Ange, that's fine. Just finish and then change after that. But like, it'd be great to have this, you've got something under your belt. I was like, okay, sure. So I finished, but then the last 7 weeks of training was in the operating room. And I actually really liked the operating room.
Hmm.
So it was, it was challenging. It was, very exciting. So I've been working in the operating room ever since. There are a few times where, I've been burnt out on several occasions from the job, right? And I think, oh, if only I had done, gone to art school or whatever. But then I realized there were so many occasions where the knowledge that I have has saved lives, right? Just this past summer, my mom, it was like, I ran out and got one of these oximeter machines to test the oxygen in your blood. I put it on my mother's finger while she was at home because she was post cardiac surgery a couple weeks after. It was like, Mom, you don't look so good. Oh, I'm fine. But she was a little short of breath. I'm like, we're going to go back to the hospital. No, I don't want to go. She didn't want to go because of COVID. And I was like, you know what? I'll be right back. I zipped to the store. I zipped back, put this thing on her finger, and she had a low saturation rate. And I'm like, we're going to the hospital right now. Right now. So, and then she had blood clots, which if she didn't get in there quick enough, she could have died. Right. So just getting back to that, like there are so many things about my nursing education and the people that I've met and all my experiences that have really been, a major advantage to my life in so many ways. So there were so many times where I regretted going to nursing school, but really, I have to say, it's not a regret. And when I realized that, that's when I started getting back to art, because I thought it was like it was either this or that, right? And then when I had the family, life was so busy, there was no time for me. And then finally, they're independent. I started getting back to myself, and I thought, yeah, I could do this, right? And with COVID, of course, like everybody's stressed out, and working in a hospital is like beyond crazy now. And so this creative practice is really necessary at this point.
Yeah.
And yeah, and they can coexist, right?
Right. I love that point. That's such a great point. It doesn't have to be this or that. It can be both. And that's actually the beauty of what has happened. It was already happening anyway. The world was shifting to this anyway. It's just that COVID completely sped it up, made us all stop and
Yeah.
think. And it's creating this world where people are like, wow, maybe I actually can have both. Maybe I can pursue something that I love. And oh, I love that story, Angie, because you're talking about how you have saved lives. You saved your own mother's life and you just never know. And you were called in that direction for a reason,
Yeah.
but you have maintained. And I love how you've come home at this point to some of the creative practices that you had as a child.
Hmm.
And what if you could have had that all along? What if you had that mentality of having both all along? How
Yeah.
could that have changed things? That's an interesting question.
Hmm. It certainly is. I probably wouldn't have hit the wall when I did. About 2014, I hit the wall. And I would come home from work and I would lie on the couch and I would sleep. Like I was never that person, right? I'd come home and I'd fall asleep. And I was like a zombie. And my husband would come home from work and he'd be like, oh, usually, because she gets home early, usually she starts cooking, but no, I'm lying flat on the couch. So he starts cooking. Hey, dinner time. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not getting up. Then he'd wake me up at 11 o'clock at night. I'd go to bed and the whole process would happen again. This happened for months. Go see the doctor. And the doctor's like, oh, you're depressed and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I'm depressed, but there's more to it than that. So it ended up, I found out that I had Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and there are so many symptoms that you can have, like brain fog was the worst of my symptoms. And it was actually very frightening because I'm at my job that I take very seriously. And, my brain was so foggy, and I thought, oh my God, like, what if I do something wrong here? It really, really scared me. So, I got help, and I found out that if I remove certain things from my diet, if I exercise a certain way instead of doing crazy boot camp things, which I love to do more mindful activities like yoga and hiking and be outside as much as possible. I did all those things and my health improved. But then when I brought back the creativity into my life, that's when I soared again and I began to thrive.
Yeah, that's
Crazy.
that is. Thank you for sharing that part of your story with everyone. And I think we've talked about this very lightly, but I also have Hashimoto's. And so, I've noticed significant differences in my life, but I probably should take up calligraphy because I loved it as a kid. I had one of those
You
sets too, and it was one of
you
those things
did.
that I did. I know. I think we're secretly the same person.
You told me that and I forgot. And you know what, Jen? Every time you post something, everything you say, I think, oh my gosh, that was me so many years ago. Except when I look at you, I think she became enlightened so much at a much younger age. And I'm so happy for you that, your world is completely open where, I was sure that mine was closed and that's all. It was terrible. That's all I was seeing. But now, now I'm seeing the whole world again, which is fantastic.
Well,
Right?
and you're opening it up by coming on this podcast. You're potentially opening it up for so many other people and helping to give that back in a huge, huge way, really
Yeah,
gifting the
I
world to
certainly
anybody.
hope so. I certainly hope so because I really, it's really like to me so much easier than trying. And I do try to meditate, but I always say like trying to sit down, like a pretzel, right? Um,
A
this
pretzel,
is
I love it.
right. You're
You
sitting
brought
down.
the food metaphor. I don't know if you know that I'm like always trying to drop food metaphors, and here you
Yes,
you,
I
you brought it to
know.
this episode.
I do know that. I remember creating a picture of you with a big chicken bone. with the chicken, right? I love that. Oh my gosh, I remember that in the creative community. That was so much fun. But yeah, like I do want to bring this. I want to shout it from the rooftops that you can have a mindfulness practice that can really be anything that you're into. Like when you're in that flow state, my husband and I like to hike, we like to ski. When I go skiing, I feel that same flow, right? I feel like I'm closer to the divine, right?
Yeah.
It's just everything just kind of slows down, and yeah, it's a great feeling. And calligraphy, definitely, when I rediscovered that this can do it, it was like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. I don't have to buy a trip to go to a real mountain out west and go skiing, although I'd love to do that. But now we can't travel anyway. But it's something that is right here on my desktop every day that I come home to. And I want other people to be able to benefit in the same way as I do.
That's amazing. I hope that we have a whole busload of creative commuters heading over to Angie's Facebook group so that we can all start to do calming calligraphy. And I hope that she will come into our group and share a little bit of her goodness with us as well so that we can experience that, because what she does is so wonderful. Angie, actually, will you tell people where they can find you?
Yes, they can find me on Instagram at Angie Bailey Art and Soul. And why don't you pop on over to my Facebook group called Calming Calligraphy? There's a lot of fun stuff going on in there.
Yay. I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Angie. I have one last question. I just like to ask this one, and I haven't asked it in a while, but I feel like I should ask you, where to you, there's no wrong answer, but
Okay.
where's the magic in the world? Where do you see it?
The magic is everywhere. We just are usually too busy to see it, but it's everywhere. Every day it's happening, these miracles that we're not really seeing because we're not being mindful. But I'm telling you, the magic is everywhere. That's how I see it.
I love it. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Angie. I hope that everyone has taken some really great things away from this interview because it was beautiful. You're just a beautiful person. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. You know I love you.
Wow. I hope you enjoyed Angie's episode. She is just such a sweetheart and wonderful human being. And I'm glad that you all have gotten to know her a little bit today in the way that I know her. And heck, I even learned a couple new things about her. It's amazing how you feel like you know somebody, but sometimes you only know one side and there's like all these little onions that you can peel back about a person. But I want to share some of the key takeaways from Angie's episode, which are so powerful. And the first is progress over perfection. Progress over perfection. That applies to calligraphy, but that applies to so many things. Think about that phrase and how that applies in your life. Her next thing is that the fun is really in the process. Do things simply because it makes you feel good, because you enjoy the experience. That's so powerful. The more we just enjoy the experience of things, the enjoyment of creating, it starts to spill into our lives, which actually comes to the next point, is that it doesn't have to be this or that. You can be multiple things. You can do multiple things, but by doing things, that's where you start to get some clarity in what you're doing. So it can be both. You can do something that you enjoy and it will start to come into other aspects of your life, and you'll start to get some clarity on whether you should be doing both. Maybe you should, but maybe you'll start to get clarity that one thing is greater. But it's okay to do multiple things at the same time and see where it joins and creates some joy in your own life. Creative commuter, thank you for listening to this episode and for listening to any episode since this began. I am so excited to drive this into the future together, and together we can inspire more people to do the things that bring them joy. Thank you so much. I will see you next time. Bye.